All right, guys, welcome to another edition of the role of data analytics and data analysts in various industries webinar. This is our sixth edition. We've been looking at the role of data analytics and data analysts in various industries. We've looked at health, we've looked at education, we've looked at logistics. We've gone as far as looking at real estate as well. But today, our focus is on the aviation sector. This is a very interesting sector, and we've seen the dynamics when it comes to data across various countries in the world. And we're looking at how the role of data analytics and data in the aviation sector, especially in Africa. And today we have three amazing data analysts who will be sharing interesting insights with us on this topic. And without wasting much time, I'm going to be bringing in, we have Godson, we have Prosper, we have Favor. These amazing data analysts who will be doing justice to this topic. So I'm going to bring up Godson to talk to us about what they think data analytics is. And let's begin from there. Please go ahead, sir.
All right, good evening, Mr. Stewart. Thank you so much for this amazing opportunity, and thank you to have us, Tech Hub, for this privilege to talk about data analytics in the Aviation Center. Please let me know if you can hear me very well. Can you hear me? Can we all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Just go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, all right. So today we are talking about data analytics in the aviation sector, right? And we want to talk about the role of data analytics and the role of a data analyst. Well, first of all, we need to begin defining what is data analytics and how is it being used in the aviation sector. Now, have you ever wondered why flights are being delayed whenever, even before the weather gets bad? Have you ever wondered such scenario? Because most times you go to the airport, your flight was scheduled by 4 p.m. and most times they reschedule it to about 6, 7 p.m., 3 hours later. Have you ever imagined why? Now that's to tell you that most of these people, they are using data to work. So what is data analytics? So data analytics is the process of collecting information, collecting data, organizing data, and then analyzing data and using it to make informed decision. Now, for example, now you go to the airport now, right? And then there are a lot of data points they collect at the airline. So for every second an airline spends on goes on, there are millions of data points that are being collected. Data points like passengers, number of passengers, fuel consumption, and so many other data they collect. Now, when all of these things are collected, now they begin to ask a question: what happened when each of these things takes off? That will lead me now to the next steps of data analysis, which is what descriptive analytics, diagnostics, predictive, and prescriptive. Now, what is descriptive? Descriptive in a nutshell answers the question, what happened? For example, so an airline, we could say, oh, indeed, for the past 6 months, there was 180 flights, or we operated 180 flights. And out of these 180 flights, right, 40 were delayed, and then the average time of delay was 25 minutes. That's descriptive. You're already saying what happened. That's data analytics. But now you're telling us what happens using historical data. So you're making use of the data to tell us what happened. Then the next one is diagnostic. Very interesting part. Now, I think one of the things I do whenever I go to the hospital is after seeing the doctor, then I ask the doctor, why did this happen to me? That's diagnostic. So diagnosis is asking, okay, there was 180 flights, 40 were delayed, and 25 minutes was the average time for delay. So the question is, why was there a delay? So you move into the diagnostic sector, right? The diagnostic part of the data analytics, where you're beginning to ask, what happened? Why did it happen? So first of all, descriptive, you're saying this is what happened. Then the next step is, why did it happen? So we go to the third one, predictive. Now, predictive is you're saying, oh, I've seen a doctor, and the doctor say, oh, this is what happened to me. This is why it happened. And this is what could happen. You get that? So I'm using something we could relate with. So even in the airline, so we said, remember this example I gave, 180 flight operated, 40 delayed, and 25 minutes average time. So predictive is saying that, oh, we realize that whenever the weather gets bad, there are possibilities that the flight will be delayed. So this is what we should do next. We should either inform passengers on time, or we should maybe do something different to get. So that's predictive. So we are using based on data and pattern to predict what could happen next. Then prescriptive is the highest form of analysis. Because the beauty of data analytics is not just to tell what happened and why it happened, it is to give a recommended advice on what to do next in order to avoid it. So now in your prescriptive, you're saying, okay, 40 delayed, and as a result of this 40 delayed, 10 was as a result of bad weather, 10 was because of there were no baggage staff on site, or maybe because the airports leaving from the other airport was delayed. And so you're saying because of this, we should hire more people here. We should make sure that whenever there's a delay, or maybe whenever the weather is bad, we should communicate to our passengers to tell them, oh, please, because that way you'll be able to get them down. So this is what data analytics is all about. So in a nutshell, data analytics is using data, collecting data, examining the data, organizing the data, and analyzing the data and using it to make an informed decision. Thank you. Hello, Mr. Stewart. Are you still with me,
Thank
Mr.
you so
Stewart?
much, sir. Thank you.
All
That's a
right, sir.
wonderful, wonderful presentation right there, giving us a very sweet and interesting background as to what data analytics is. So we're going to move straight to Mr. Prosper. Mr. Prosper will be guiding us through as to, uh, you know, just telling us about what the aviation industry is all about, like just taking us, giving us an idea, before we proceed. Mr. Prosper, are you there? Over to you, sir.
Okay, good evening, everybody. And I want to use this opportunity to thank Mr. Stewart for this wonderful, for giving us the privilege to present this wonderful topic, and also to my colleagues. I want to thank everybody. Well, moving on, I would like I would like to start by breaking down what aviation truly means. Because I remember as a teenager, uh, when I first heard about aviation, I was like, what's this about? Then I did my research and I found out it was about airplanes. So I would like to break it down for that teenager that's listening to me right now before I go further. It's just basically about airplanes. No need to stress yourself about too many big grammar. It's just basically about airplanes. Well, from my presentation board, um, sorry, for my presentation board, aviation is a rich data industry. If you've been at uh, the airport works 24 hours. 24 hours. I've been at the airport like by 1 a.m. and that was my first time and I was surprised. They were still working, overtime. I was like, these people, don't they close? They were like, no, that's so imagine working 24 hours, imagine the millions of data that must have been generated, you know, between those 24 hours. So I would like to go further by saying the industry activities related is the aviation is an industry activity related to aircraft, which I've said. It includes airplanes, helicopters, airports, airlines, air traffic control, and air travel. The aviation industry connects the world. It generates and relies vast amounts of data for its operation, safety, efficiency, and decision making. So for me, I would like to say the evolution of aviation should be considered, if it is not, it should be considered as one of the wonders of this world. Because if we look at back how aviation started with hot air balloon in the 18th century, and then it hit its major first break in 1903. It has been evolving. It has been evolving ever since then. It has been, leading to stronger and faster, more reliable airplanes that have become one of the world's largest data-driven industry. You know, so data as we all know should be protected. And this is why the aviation industry have highly regulated bodies. These highly regulated bodies, we have global regulated bodies like the ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization that was established in 1944. We also have the FAA, which is the Federal Aviation Administration. This one is effective in the US. It is the European Union Aviation Safety Agency. In Nigeria, we also have governing bodies in Nigeria, and these bodies include the Nigerian Safety Investigation Bureau, the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, the Nigerian Airspace Management Agency. These agencies work together under the guidance of the International Civil Aviation Organization, to maintain and improve aviation safety in Nigeria. So moving on, we have low margins in the aviation industry. It says thin profits mean every efficiency gained through data matters. Let's break this down. So airlines focus on efficiency, safety, and data analytics to reduce costs and improve profitability. In this process, airlines get low margins. Low margins are they are after now every airline pays for the space of the airport, if that's how it should be put. Every airline pays for the space of the airport. They pay for operating costs. Yeah, thank you very much. They pay for operating costs. They pay for flight operations. So after paying for all these things, these payments are what generates data, and one of the factors that generates data in the aviation industry. We move further to many moving parts in this aviation industry, because everything in the aviation industry is counted for, is how would I put it? It is analyzed. You get, it is analyzed. Many moving parts. We have airlines, we have air traffic controllers, we have manufacturers, we have the MRO providers, which is the maintenance, repairs, and overhaul providers, and also constant data flow. This particular one in the aviation industry is what generates data in large, quantity. Every flight, every passenger, every part generates a trail of information. We have booking, we have scheduling, we have maintenance. Every department in the aviation industry generates data on a daily basis, millions and millions of data. So in a nutshell, now in real world example, the global aviation analytics market was valued at roughly 2.6 billion US dollars in 2023, and is projected to grow around 10% per year through 2030. That's a clear signal of how much airlines are investing in turning data into to make decisions. So yes, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Hello, Mr. Stewart. Are you there?
Thank you so much. We're going to proceed, and I'll go back to Godson. Godson,
All right, sir.
clear. Um, you know, let's have an idea as the kind of data. All right, the kind of data that the aviation industry generates. That would be nice if you can run us through that. We'd like to have an idea.
Okay, sir. All
This
right.
industry. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Okay, sir. Just like every business have their own specific data points they collect, or the kind of data they collect, and that's because of it. It's designed to help make a better decision for their own sector. Now, for the aviation sector, these are the specific kind of data they collect. We have flight operations, right? So they take note of, because there are people now. People only think that the only thing that happens in the aviation sector, maybe just the sector, is just the pilot, the air hostesses, and all of those things. These are the kind of data that this aviation sector generates. So they generate flight operations, passenger data, weather, and airspeeds. And most of these things are cloud database, all right? Most of these are data, these most of these data points they get are cloud-based. But then the ones that are very normal, it's when you get to the airport. Of course, when you register, they collect your details. That's under passenger data, where they ask some specific information about your age and some other things about you. All right, flight operation, the number of flights that is done, maybe within a specific period of time. Then weather condition and earthquakes. Sensor. Now this is basically cloud-based. maintenance records. So what, like for every flight that has gone, there's always a maintenance cost, right? There's always a maintenance process for each of these flights. So these are the data that the aviation sector generates: flight operations, passenger details, weather and airspace data, sensor maintenance records, and financial and market data. Now, all of these joined together are the kind of, now there are millions of other data points that the aviation sector, but these are the major ones. These are the ones, all right, that they generate that also helps them to make a better and informed decision. Thank you. Hello, Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, did you get me? Hello, Mr. Stewart. Prosper, can you hear me? Can someone hear me?
You, we can hear you.
All right, sir. All right, sir. I was on talking, sir.
All right. So let me bring up Prosper to us. On Godson, you can continue and talk to us about the role of data analytics in the aviation sector. I think
Okay,
you can
just
continue to
like
talk.
I began saying earlier, right? Now, I believe that almost everyone is a data analyst. Now, these are the foundational level, right? So I will give a scenario. You come back, maybe you're about going to church, and then you're putting on a beautiful dress. You just pull out your phone. You wanted to book a boat, and then you check your bank details. Your bank statement is telling you you have 25,000, and boat is going to charge you 10,000 naira. Now, you're not going to make this payment because of what? You know that if you book this boat, you may not have transport to come back and you're going to work within the weekend, during the week. So you were able to make an informed decision based on your bank statement, right? So so every in the aviation sector also. Now, what role does data analytics does? So, for instance, based on the examples I gave earlier, 180 flights in a month, in 6 months, 40 delayed, right? And out of these 40, the 25, there was 25 minutes average time for the delay. So data analytics is gathering all of this information and it's beginning to ask, right? When it when all of these things are being collected, so data analytics is beginning to, the role of data analytics is going through all of this information again, asking questions. What happened? How did it happen? All right. So, for example, right, we noticed that the reason why there was a delay was because of the flight that moved from this particular airport was delayed. All right. And then another reason why it was also delayed was because of the weather was bad. Another reason was because now you're digging in through the data that has been given to you. Remember what I said earlier, the data that are being collected in the aviation sector. So when all of these data sets are being collected, the data analytics is now asking questions with these things. What happened? How did it happen? And you're not making assumptions. You're using those specific data. You're digging into it and you're saying, oh, this was the reason why there was a delay because of the flight moving from this particular airport to this other airport was delayed. And also, during the loading of baggages, it took a whole lot of time because of we didn't have enough staff on ground to help that. So data analytics is saying, okay, because we noticed that the number of people, the number of staff that would have helped to load some of these baggages were not enough. So you're making an informed decision saying, based on this, we are saying we should have more staff on ground. And also because of bad weather condition made the delay, that which we cannot control. So we need to also tell our passengers ahead that, oh, because of the weather is going to change, there will be a change in time. So everybody be relaxed. We're going to shift it. So you're trying to use data analytics. You're not just telling what happened. You're also using it to find out what happened, why did it happen, and then you're using it to make informed decisions. Now, why it is so important is because of, for every flight that arrives safely on time, there's a result of proper data analytics. And what do I mean by that? For every time a flight goes off, data are being collected. And when those data are being collected, they are being analyzed so that whenever the flight is going again, they will use the data collected to make a proper decision. And sometimes the reason why a what's it called a flight can be delayed may not even be because of bad weather, because you don't make such assumptions. So your data is telling you, oh, this was the reason why it was delayed. This was the reason why it was not delayed. So you're using your information to tell the managers to say, oh, this is what we're going to do. We need more staff on ground. Weather is not the issue. We need to communicate with the airports over there so they can do whatever they are doing on time. And we should also get more staff on ground, change the booking procedure in order to help. So all of these things, it's what data analytics does. It helps to manage things properly. It helps to make informed decisions. So whatever delay that has been happening, or maybe the cost of maintenance also, right? Another, oh, that's true. Have you ever wondered how tickets are being priced? Now, those things are not random. They are data analytics. It's data analytics. Because sometimes you check that during some seasons, it's as though the prices are being hiked. It was not random. It's not because they wanted to make some big money or they wanted to extort money from their passengers. They're making all of those decisions based on historical data. So they've looked at the past and they say, oh, this is what happens from this season. Or and also the cost of maintenance. If the cost of maintenance increases, and the data analytics, okay, you're looking at this and we say, oh, the cost of maintaining this flight is actually high. So it's proper for us to increase it. So if you see all of this encompassing is data analytics. So don't think it was just something random. No, it's not random. It is as a result of proper data analytics. So the role of data analytics in the aviation sector is very powerful, very, very, very important, because for every flight that goes and returns safely and on time is as a result of proper data analytics. Thank you, sir. Hello, sir.
All right, thank you so much, sir. Thank you. That was very, very in depth, and thank you so much for hitting it straight to the point. Um, I'm trying to see if we still just a minute.
Okay, sir.
I think network is not being so fair to. All right. I'm trying. I think I brought back Prosper on the call. Okay. All right. Prosper, if you can hear me, Prosper, if you can hear me, so over to you. I would like to come to you so you can talk to us as to why collecting data is hard. I mean, I'm just seeing that on your slide now. I mean, talk to us about that. Why? What are the challenges that we're facing in that sector when it comes to collecting data? Go ahead, Prosper. We can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, sir. And I also want to thank my. I also want to thank. Can you hear me, please?
Can I hear you, Prosper?
Okay. I also want to thank my colleague, Mr. Godson, for his wonderful insight he just dropped. So concerning the challenge of collecting data, as data analyst is one of the most difficult parts of the job, collecting data and gathering data. When you collect this data and you gather them, especially to when you want to work on a project, is most times very difficult. And to that effect, you would want to protect that data. You would want to be selfish with it. And imagine working in an organization where there are different departments and every department wants to protect their data, every department wants to guide their data. It will be very difficult for that organization to make informed decision making. So to be precise, on my slide here we have, before data can be analyzed, it has to be gathered, and that's harder than it sounds. Yeah, it's true. And then we have our number one, data silos. It says ops, maintenance, crew, and passengers systems rarely talk to each other. Let me break it down. For a perfect definition, data silos is a situation where information is isolated or data is isolated in one department or system or database, making it difficult for others in the organization or in an organization to access or use. And this happens a lot in the aviation industry, like a whole lot. It happens in booking systems. It happens in booking systems that has passenger informations. And passenger informations need to be protected at all costs. It happens. Data is protected in the maintenance system. It is also protected in flight operations. And these systems, most times, they don't share information, because imagine a passenger with their personal information being shared. And one of the things with data is that data, like I said before, data needs to be protected. If data is not protected, that data cannot be trusted. The only time you can trust the data is when that data is coming from a protected and reliable source. So if these systems cannot share information with one another, then it is called data silos. Because data silos slow decision making, it reduces operational efficiency, it makes it harder to identify trends and problems, it creates inconsistent data. The second I have is legacy systems. It says on my screen, decades of measures left incompatible, hard to modify infrastructure. Now, when we say legacy systems, I'm talking about hardware systems. I'm talking about the computer systems. I'm talking about software, outdated softwares and technologies that are still in use. And even if we have new professional, new systems, new technology that can perform essential functions, it is not being used in most cases. And it is a major challenge because it limits data sharing, it limits high maintenance, it limits it's there's high maintenance costs. Yes, it's slow operations. There is high risk for cyber security, difficult integration, reduced innovation. Now, simply put, legacy systems is a challenge. Legacy systems, they're a challenge in the aviation industry because they are outdated. They are outdated technologies that are costly to maintain. Difficult in integrating systems. And you can't integrate a legacy system and a very old system with these fast and efficient modern day systems, and it can reduce efficiency. There is high risk of security breaches in data sharing and the rest. And then we go on to volume and velocity. On my screen it says billions of rows generated daily, faster than manual tools can handle. Are we together? Are we together? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Prosper, we are with you. You're making sense. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Okay. And it says under volume and velocity. Now, volume and velocity are one of the two big V's. We call them big V's in data analytics. Volume and velocity. Volume refers to the massive quantity of data generated every day by the aviation industry. In my last presentation, like my last listen, I said the aviation industry runs 24 hours. 24 hours. So imagine 24 hours, a company running for 24 hours. Imagine the millions of data that will be generated. And it comes in bulk. If, an airline can fly about 200 persons from Lagos to Port Harcourt. And that same airline will take another set of 200 persons from Port Harcourt back to Lagos. So imagine the amount of data, voluminous data that will be generated just within 2 hours to 3 hours. Just imagine how large it will be. So billions of data are generated every day in the aviation industry. Some of these data are gotten from aircraft sensors, not just passenger bookings. They are getting from aircraft sensors, flight data, airport operations, air traffic control systems. Just like my colleague Mr. Guston stated, he said whether if an airline is about to take off and there is no proper analysis on weather conditions, that flight cannot take off. And so weather monitoring systems are enabled to make sure that these data are processed. I remember some time ago, not too long, an airline was about to take off from Lagos to Port Harcourt, although passengers were already boarded, but it was delayed because there was an information that the weather condition in Port Harcourt is very bad and terrible. So it was delayed. And after like an hour, they said it is clear and good to go. And this airline took off mid-air. Mid-air, they encountered a serious. They've already arrived Port Harcourt, but they could not land. And so they were just hovering in the air because it was quite hazardous for them to land. They couldn't land. They were just hovering around in the air. And it got to a point, I'm not exaggerating this, it happened on a Sunday. It got to a point where they had to fly back to Lagos. So imagine the time wasted. They had to fly back to Lagos. And before they flew back to Lagos, they also had to confirm the weather condition in Lagos. They had to fly back. And when they got to Lagos, they had to wait for a while. Again, this flight was a flight that took off 6 a.m. And it was supposed to land latest 7:30. But because of those kind of delays, it took time. And assuming there was no data, I wonder what kind of disaster would have happened that day. But after they got to Lagos and it was clear that Port Harcourt's weather condition is now fine, they now flew back to Port Harcourt and landed safely. So imagine there was no data. Imagine there was no weather monitoring system. Just imagine what would have happened that day. So data also, we also have data coming from the aircraft maintenance records, and this volume and velocity is a challenge because it stores huge amounts of data that requires large and expensive storage systems. Remember, I talked about legacy systems. Most of those legacy systems don't have enough storage systems. They are not built to carry such large information. So another challenge is processing and analyzing large data sets, significant data sets that have significant computing power. Managing and securing all the data is complex. The volume of a data set, the volume of data that the aviation industry generates on a daily basis, it is difficult to manage, it is difficult to secure, and it is complex and it is costly. And that's why the aviation industry is one of the data-rich industries in the world, not just in Nigeria, in the world. It is one of the data-rich industries that without data, aviation cannot operate. Without data, aviation cannot operate. We move over to velocity. The third output said volume and velocity, but I had to break it down. We move over to velocity. Velocity refers to the speed. Of course, when we hear velocity, we should know that it is speed. It refers to the speed at which data is generated. It refers to the speed at which data is transmitted. It refers to the speed at which data is processed. For example, aircraft sensors. Aircraft sensors send performance data. They send performance data during flights. Air traffic controllers, they use real-time aircraft operations updates. Flight schedules and passenger information are updated in real time. And this velocity, this aspect of aviation, this aspect of aviation is a challenge because data must be processed almost instantly to support safe operations. Just like the example I gave with the airline that took off from Lagos to Port Harcourt and just to hover around in Port Harcourt because of bad weather conditions. If there were no um sorry okay if there were no weather information, if there are no weather information, only God knows what would have happened to that airline, because they would have assumed, and it is very wrong as an organization to always assume your decision. It is very wrong without sufficient data by your side, or sufficient information that your data has generated. We also have flight schedules and passenger information updated in real time. So I said it is a challenge because data must be processed almost instantly to support safe conditions. Yes, just like the example I gave. Delays in processing schedules and decision making. Airlines and airlines and airlines and airports powerful use powerful real-time analysis. They handle continuous system updates in real time. So these challenges in the aviation industry are very there are challenges that need to be looked into in the aviation industry, because from my first slide, the data silos, it stated that data is protected. They don't like sharing their data, even if they work in the same organization. They like protecting their data. Also, legacy
Yeah,
systems. It needs
thank you, Prosper.
okay.
So that's actually quite insightful. Thank you. Um, I want us to look at something very critical now. I want to bring up Godson. Let's look at the concept of keeping data clean and safe. Let's look at that concept, keeping data clean and safe. Let's see how that works. Considering that we've Prosper has told us all the challenges that we have to face and all of that, but how do we keep data clean and safe? Over to you, sir. Hear me? Prosper, can you hear me now?
Still,
Prosper, can you hear me? Your mic is muted in case you're speaking. Godson, can you hear me now? Godson, please, if you can hear me, just go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, I can hear you. It's breaking. Did you ask a question, sir? Ah, I can't hear you. Hello, sir. Did you say something? Prosper, can you hear me? Jesus. Okay, let me briefly talk about keeping data clean and then safe. All right. Prosper began talking about the challenges of gathering some of this data. And then as he was talking, I was just laughing because I have a friend who works as a data analyst in the aviation sector. And then I can tell you that cleaning data is one of the major responsibilities of a data analyst. On an average, I think a data analyst in the aviation sector spends almost 60 to 80% of time cleaning and preparing this data for before analysis. And then you would say, oh, there's AI to do all of those things. Yes, there's AI, but then you need to understand what this data is all about. You need to pay attention to every detail because you can't trust AI with 100% of your data. Of course, AI is still AI. It will definitely make mistakes. So that's one of the major challenges of data cleaning in this thing, in the aviation sector. So now the thing here is why it is most challenging to clean data sets gotten from this aviation sector is because of most of these data sets come from different systems, right? So they come from aircraft sensors, booking platforms, airports, maintenance logs, radar services, baggage systems, and all of those things. Now, and some of these data are automatically recorded. Some were written by humans, right? Some were recorded by humans, and that's very interesting because you're having two different sources, two different systems. So this one is being recorded by system automatically. This one is being recorded by humans. And do you know the funny thing? Even these systems are sometimes are not very consistent with this data. Sometimes they make mistakes, and then you can't also trust humans because I think I remember a time I was analyzing the data a few days back, right? And when I had done the analysis and I realized that there was an outlier, so I had to go back to the data set. It was a data set, the column was specific for distances 24.1, 24 kilometer. So when I went back to check the data, I realized that there was 250 kilometer, and that was very impossible. So even in the aviation sector, these data can also be wrong. Not wrong in the sense of it was not the right data. No, it could be, but because of it can be it's written by humans, it will be very wrong. So one of the major challenges of data cleaning in the aviation sector is, of course, there will be missing data which can be done by humans, right? And sometimes the systems could also make mistakes, duplicate records. But the one I feel that its major issue is the volume of data that the aviation sector gets. It's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. And then we talk about keeping this data safe. And that's what is called data security and privacy. Now, this is very important because there are bodies that keep details of that regulate all of these things, right? Now, the airlines collect sensitive information about most of their passengers. Now, passengers' names, details, payment information, contact details, sometimes even house address, where they are going to. Now, all of these details are very personal, they are very private, and that's where you need to learn where the information, like he was talking about data, protecting some of these data sets. Now, as a data analyst, one of your major role is to ensure that this information is protected and only accessed by authorized personnel. Because you just got, I see some people doing something of late. Some people just pick data set and then they analyzed. And sometimes I wonder, is this not a normal business data set? Because if you pick up data sets for these people and then you're posting it online, that's wrong. And you can't share these things carelessly. So beyond analyzing and giving recommendations to these people, right? Your role also as a data analyst is to make sure that sensitive information of the passengers are kept and only reviewed to the authorized personnel, because we have regulatory bodies that also come for this, and then we also have cyber security. Interesting thing now is data analytics. I think, was it Alex that was talking about moving data cost, what's it called, stored in the cloud? So there's like a migration towards the cloud. So as a data analyst, it's also very important to also understand that there could also be cyber attacks, right? So you need to understand how to protect this data in the cloud. So beyond just your normal analysis skills, Excel, Power BI, and all of those things, it's very important for you to understand how to keep some of these data safe and clean. Thank you. So I don't know, Prosper. Can you hear me, Prosper? Okay, so now I think network is okay. Okay, let me talk about the role of a data analyst, then Prosper would Just like I've said earlier, all right, the same thing a data analyst would do in an e-commerce sector is the same you would do in the aviation sector. The same thing a data analyst would do in a sales, maybe in a cosmetic shop or in a sales related sector, is also the same thing. So you're collecting sales, or we sold 50 cartons of biscuits, we sold 25 cartons of Indomie, we sold this particular thing. And then at the end of the day, you're saying, oh, customer comes in the morning, the customers prefers Indomie, and we sell more of Indomie during seasonal period. You're gathering all of this information and you're making a recommendation to the business owner, and you're saying, oh, we realize that based on the data we've collected, analyzed, you realize that most of our customers prefers Indomie during seasonal period, and because of that, we should buy more of Indomies during this particular season. That's the recommendation. Now, in the aviation sector, based on the examples I've given earlier, right? So you're gathering, when you've gathered all of these data, now trust me, like I said, in data cleaning, it is a whole lot. You gather millions of data. And the beautiful thing there is there's AI to help. But you can't fully depend on AI because, one, you're asking questions, right? You're asking questions. Oh, there was a delay in flights, and the average time was 25%. Nobody cares to know what is 25% of delay. You need to tell them, oh, there was 25% in delay because of specific reasons. So you don't just throw numbers there. Now, your role as a data analyst is not just to use Excel, SQL, just to analyze and then tell them, oh, this is what is you are telling. And that's where you also need to learn how to think, right? Prosper began sharing his experience and how passengers were agitating when there was a kind of a delay. Now, imagine yourself in that situation and your flight is being delayed and you're going to miss an appointment and you finally get to work in that team. What would be your major concern? What is causing this delay? What are the factors causing this delay? And now you may need to also understand the domain knowledge of the aviation sector, because you need to understand what are the specific factors I need to check out that causes delay. Now, you must also know that when I say data, it's very specific. It is not generic. For every sector, they have their own specific kind of data. So in the aviation sector, they also have their own data. So you're asking yourself, oh, I was delayed as a result. You really don't know what it was, but you know that you were delayed and information was not given to you. Now you're asking yourself, if I should work in here as a data analyst, what are the things I'm going to do? So you're picking up the data sets, you're studying the data sets, 180 flights, 40 delayed. You sit down, you begin to investigate column by column, checking those specific data or specific columns that could give you an answer to that question. Or maybe you're checking arrival time, all of those things, delays, and then you think, oh, this was the reason why there was a delay. So you're making a recommendation to the management. I realize that because of the loads our passengers comes with are much, and it takes more time to load them inside the flight. So what should we do? Recommendation is, because you're not going to stop passengers from carrying loads, what you're going to do is you're making a recommendation to the business. We need to have more hands. We need to have more more staff that could help in loading this thing. That way, it will reduce time, that value. Now, another thing also you're checking the cost of maintenance, and you realize, oh, we are spending so much. This particular aircraft goes the same route with this other aircraft, and it's taking. Because you're also thinking, as a business person, if this was to be my business, what are the things I need to put out to make sure that I am not spending so much, right? So these are the things you begin to ask. You don't just build dashboards, right? So you check specific things and you say, oh, it is consuming more fuel. So what do? You begin to check what could be the reason. And instead of that, is there a way we can replace it with something? So your role is not just to pick all of this information and then just tell them this is your data. No, you're creating questions, all right? You're looking at your data and you're digging deep to know the factors that are causing delay. What are customers complaining about? Of course, there could be customers complain. So your job is you take in these records, right? And you're looking at it. What are the major things customers are complaining about? And you're thinking, how do we resolve this? Because you're giving, it's more like to a point, sometimes I feel a data analyst is almost a business consultant, because you are telling the business what they should do. But yours is you're not just making assumptions based on experience. The number is giving you a guide. on what to say and how to say it. So you realize that, oh, customers have been complaining about this. Maybe our the customer service are very rude or something, and you're taking in these things and you're saying, oh, we need to work on this, we need to work on this, we need to work. So you're making a business recommendation that could help them move forward. So that's one of the beautiful things a data analyst does in the aviation sector. So I don't know if Prosper is still here too. The future of data analytics in the aviation sector. Well, this is really interesting, right? Because I think every sector is integrating AI at a very high speed, right? Now, there will be kind of, I think, the way we are going now, right? The way the world is evolving very fast. AI it's being integrated so fast that it's not going to replace the human effort, right? But then it's going to automate most of the processes that is being done in almost every sector, and aviation sector is not left behind, right? So real-time AI ready data. So trusted live data pipelines as the foundation. So for AI, there will be like integration, taking in real live data, which you because previously, like I said earlier, some of these data may not be correct. Some of them are not consistent, right? But with the help of AI, when these AIs are being trained, all right, it will be able to bring trusted data and to a great point or to a great what's the word? And I'm trying to find the word. To a high rate, all right, it will be trusted, all right. It can be trusted. The next one is sustainability analytics, tracking fuel efficiency. Now, if this, like I said, most of these things, all right, most of these, like I said earlier, data comes from different sources, the human point and then the system, where, of course, but majorly AI, I mean, majorly the data source or the data collection is done automatically in the aviation sector. But then there's a part of where the human does some things, right? And it's this fuel tracking, fuel efficiency, and all of those things. When AI is integrated into all of these things, the rate of mistake will be reduced significantly. You will not doubt that. But still, there will still be a human to cross check. But the way, because there would be mistakes in checking all of these things, but when it is being done, when AI is being integrated into it, it will, of course, it will try the efficiency is going to increase by. But so basically, in a nutshell, data analysts should also learn how to integrate AI in the aviation sector because it's going to change almost every how it runs. It's going to increase the efficiency. It's going to increase how it is being operated. So the wise thing to do is to understand or to make it study how can AI or how is AI going to change the aviation sector. So I think that will be all for now. Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. So this it's honestly this has been an amazing time here, right? Despite the network conditions, we want to say thank you for joining us. And if you're a data analyst looking forward to working in the aviation sector, please is a good place to be, all right? It's gonna stretch your muscles, right? You're not just gonna get data to maybe just talk to them what data it's being used for. You're gonna be working with this data, helping them to make informed decision. Like what I said earlier, for every flight that arrives on time, takes off, and arrives safely, and customers' complaints are almost minimal, is as a result of data analytics and as a result of a good data analyst. Because you can have the data, right? And if you do not properly examine this data or analyze this data sets, you will not come to a point where there will be informed decision that will help the airline. So aviation sector is not exempted in the area of data analytics, right? But then you just have to understand how it operates, how the data are being used, and how you can help them make informed decision. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you, Havas. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. And